Councillor Brian Coleman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for calling me to pay tribute to Lady Thatcher. I must commend you, Mr. Mayor. In 1959, of course, she was elected Member of Parliament for Finchley and Prime Barnet, which had a proud civic history of its own as a separate local authority, and she never forgot that she represented Finchley and Prime Barnet through her many years in Parliament. Mr. Mayor, you have referred to occasions in this chamber that featured strongly in her career, and I could add to Jack Cohen's vinaigrette of the 1987 declaration presided over by the late Councillor Malcolm Lester, because apparently she was being entertained in the parlour by the Mayor, and with the mayoral bottle of scotch was being consumed, and Dimbleby on the television was saying, and Mrs Thatcher's on her way back to Downing Street, and she was heard to yell at the television and say, "No, I'm not, because they haven't bloody finished counting here yet." Everything may change, but the slowness of the count in Barnet, unfortunately, is something that does not change over the decades. Mr. Mayor, you referred to the great occasion in 1980, when the freedom of the borough was conferred, and you read out a long list of civic notables at the time who spoke in that debate. And of course, Mr. Mayor, one thing about that list, a considerable number of them were women. They were strong, powerful women. You mentioned the late Rita Levy, the late Edna James, the late Ina Constable, and the late Betty Gibson. Women in this borough have always played a prominent role in the political life of this council. Mr. Mayor, the late Margaret Thatcher had a sort of love-hate relationship with Barnet Council. She railed against the attempts in the 1960s to send this borough comprehensive, and she tried her hardest during a period of Secretary of State for Education and Science from 1974 to save the remaining grammar schools. Woodhouse School, for example, had a short, brief respite. And she sometimes berated the then leader of the council, Leslie Pym, that he wasn't being radical enough, and that the rates at the time in Barnet were too high. I think she rather wished that she could run the council as well as run the country. But, Mr. Mayor, I am minded of a story told by the late Sir Rex Hunt, who was Governor of the Falkland Islands at the time of the invasion, when Mrs Thatcher visited the Falkland Islands immediately after the successful reconquest. And she visited the grave of the first British casualty killed in that conflict, a young man called Nick Taylor, who was a Harrier pilot and who came from Barnet, and whose sister I went to primary school with. She was in this helicopter with Sir Rex Hunt, and he produced a pair of Wellington boots. And he says to Mrs Thatcher, Prime Minister, she says, "What are these boots for, Sir Rex?" "Well, Prime Minister, it will be very muddy on this hillside, because the Argentinians buried Nick Taylor where he was shot down. And therefore, you'll need your Wellington boots." And she turned to Sir Rex and said, "If you think that I am visiting this young man's grave in a pair of Wellington boots, Sir Rex, I'm afraid you've got another thing to come." The helicopter duly landed. She got out in her high heels and went virtually knee-deep in the mud, but that didn't worry Lady Thatcher. Not only did she contribute so much to this borough, to the constituency, to the United Kingdom, but I would suggest that this borough and Finchley will not see the light again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.